Last week I was speaking about the Rambam describes in two places the abundance of knowledge that will be when Moshiach will come. You have in Hilchos Tshuva and in Hilchos Melachim. In Hilchos Tshuva he writes that will be tirba hadeya or hadas v'chacham v'emes, knowledge, wisdom, and truth will increase. Everyone will know about Hashem. And he says that this is due to the fact that Moshiach will be both will be smarter than Shlomo, will be a Baal Chachma more than Shlomo, and he'll be a great prophet close to Moshe Rabbeinu. Therefore, he will teach everyone about the way of Hashem, and all the goyim will come to hear him, etc. Then you have, in the end of Hilchos Melachim, right at the end of the Rambam Sefer, the Rambam writes, he describes that because due to the fact that the world will be, there will be abundance of good, there won't be any war or hunger, people, they say there won't be any war or hunger, fighting or jealousy, someone says, know what that means? He says, yeah, no more newspapers. So people will be busy, there won't be any news to worry about, this to worry about. But they're going to be busy with the whole time, knowing the Eibishter.
The news will be Moshiach.
Right, so I understand, but in other words, it won't be the same type of news as today.
It's not sensational, that doesn't sell. Yes, the New York Times doesn't sell.
It'll finally be sensational.
Okay.
He says, therefore, the Yidden will be Chachamim Gedolim, great sages, great Chachamim, and he writes the words, V'yoidim dvarim hastum, they'll know the hidden things, V'yasigu das boiram, they'll grasp the knowledge of their Creator, K'fi koyach ha'adam, as much as a person is able to grasp. Shenamar, this is the famous word that Rambam finishes off the Sefer, as it says, Kimala ha'aretz zeis Hashem k'mayim liyom b'chas, the world will be filled with knowledge of Hashem as water covers the sea. Now, what the Rebbe has a number of sichos the Rebbe focuses on in the Rebbe's medayik, on the words that Rambam uses. The Rebbe points out that the Rambam doesn't. There's a certain choice of words that Rambam uses to try to understand what the Rambam is alluding to. The Rambam writes two things at the end of Hilchos Melachim. He says, "V'yodim dvarim hastumin," they will know the hidden things, and he says, "V'yasigu da'az boirim k'koyach adam," they'll understand, they'll grasp knowledge of their Creator as much as a k'koyach adam, as the capability of a person. So the Rebbe has a few sichos. The Rebbe explains this in the Kudah. There's a few different biurim, I would say, in the Rebbe sichos. Sometimes if one is sometimes a bit different or a bit contradictory, even a little bit one to another, but Mishivim Panam Latera. Let's focus a little bit on some of the biurim. One biur the Rebbe says in a few places, the Rebbe explains like this. The Rebbe says that in order to understand the Rambam here, we have to go back to the beginning of the Rambam. The end of the Rambam is really connected with the beginning of the Rambam. What's the first mitzvah? How does the Rambam start the Sefer? The Rambam starts the Sefer that the Yesod HaYesod is the foundation of all foundations, the pillar of all wisdoms, is to know that there's a Motzei Rishon. I don't know how you translate it in English, you'll do a better job than me. There's one existence, which is the first existence, that he created everything, and everything was created from the truth of his existence, and everything that's in heaven and on earth and wherever it may be was only created from his amitas himote, from his true existence. And then the Rambam goes on to explain that if someone were to think that the Eibusher Rahman Litzlan doesn't exist, nothing else will be able to exist. But if the world, whatever. Then the Rambam goes on, he spends 4 chapters in the first beginning of his Mishnah Torah, and in general the 4 chapters are divided in two. The first 2 chapters are known Maaseh Merkava. The next 2 chapters are called Maaseh Bereishis, which means in the first 2 chapters the Rambam discusses about the Eibishter himself. He discusses the idea of the Eibishter's existence. He discusses the idea of the Eibishter's yichud, what it means that the Eibishter is one, that the Eibishter is achdas pshut, a simple unity, and that the Eibishter is not a body, he's not physical, and he, the thing that Rambam discusses there, then he discusses there's the mitzvah of Amunah, there's the mitzvah of Yichud Hashem. Then the Rambam discusses, the Rambam says, how could a person come to love and fear Hashem? So the Rambam says, by a person meditating in seeing the Eibishter's wisdom in creation, to rephrase what the Rambam is saying, person sees that will cause a person, one hand, to have a great desire to cleave to Hashem, realizing Hashem's greatness. And at the same time, he'll have a very strong feeling of fear, he'll see how insignificant he is compared to Hashem, so he'll have a fear of Hashem. So the Rambam goes on to explain about the Malachim. He explains that to understand Eibish's creation, certain creations that are physical, certain creations that are spiritual. So he explains a bit about the Malachim, about the Neshama, about the Metzias of the Neshama. Then he goes on to explain Ma'aseh B'reish. He explains the world, the heavens, the four Yesodis, Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Ofer, fire, water, earth, and air, and how the different types of things, the different parts of heaven, things like that. And the goal of all of that is when your person meditates in Eibish's creations, from the highest creation to the lowest creation, he gets a certain feeling of love and fear for Hashem. So is there a Rambam here?
First, yeah?
Yeah. Now, the Rambam, fine. The Rambam writes, he finishes off, he says that, that's what he writes. Yeah, the Rambam. Okay, I'll get to that soon. But anyway, now when you think about this, I want to first discuss what does the mitzvah of knowing Hashem mean. The first mitzvah that the Rambam teaches us is the mitzvah of knowing Hashem. What does that mitzvah entail? So the mitzvah doesn't just entail knowing the fact that there is Hashem. First of all, there's nothing much to dwell on that. And furthermore, as many Mefarshim ask, they say there can't be by default. It's impossible to say there's a mitzvah to know that the Eibishter exists. Because why should a person want to fulfill the mitzvahs? Because he believed the Eibishter commanded them. The belief in the Eibishter is something which has to come before any mitzvah is able to be given to you. You can't say, there's a mitzvah to believe that there's someone that's commanding you to do the mitzvahs. It doesn't work like that. You can't have a mitzvah of a commandment if you don't have a commander. So the belief in the Eibishter in of itself is not a mitzvah. The mitzvah, as the Rebbe emphasized many times, is leida sheisha malka, that we believe in the Eibishter, but to understand and to comprehend the different aspects as much as we could, how the Eibishter, about the Eibishter's existence. Not shy to know the etzem mitzvahs of the Eibishter, but to understand the idea the Eibishter is one, as the Rambam explains, also to understand how the Eibishter, the Rambam is in Taish Yisrael's Klor, what the Bab and others explain the mitzvahs to understand how the Eibishter is the most perfect existence that there could be. That he's shalim b'chol minei shleimius, that this existence that's there is the most perfect one. He's the ultimate type of existence that it's past that there is. And these things, this is part of the mitzvah of knowing about Hashem. The Rebbe goes further, and the Rebbe says not only directly learning about Hashem is included in the mitzvah of knowing about Hashem, but all the things over here, which are what the Rambam continues, and the Rambam speaks about knowing about the Malachim, knowing about the Neshama, knowing about the Galgalim, the different heavenly orbits, and the different planets, and the four elements, and the things like that. All that is also part of knowledge of Hashem. Why? The Pashtus way, it seems from the Rambam, is the beginning, the first parak, the Rambam discusses about Hashem himself. Then he says that he's explaining to you these things about the Malachim, the Neshamas, different things, in order to be, you should be able to meditate and see Hashem's greatness in creation. So through that, we'll appreciate somewhat of the Eibusher, so will bring us to love and fear Hashem. But the Rebbe says it's not only, the Rambam is not only telling us these things in order that we should bring us to love and fear of Hashem, but knowing these things is part of knowing Hashem. In other words, the Rebbe says, let's say when you see how the Eibusher's creation in the world and things like that, this gives us an understanding a little bit of what the Eibusher does. It gives us an understanding of how you're able to when you understand the Lakus, you understand the way the Eibusher is in creation is part of understand. It's not just a way for us getting to love and fear Hashem, but it's included in the mitzvah of knowing Hashem. So the Rebbe says like this. The Rebbe says when the Rambam finishes off his sefer that when Moshiach will come, what is the whole world going to be busy with? Knowing Hashem, right? So he's referring back to the mitzvah of Yediyas Hashem that he discussed in the beginning of the sefer. So the Rebbe says when Mashiach will come, since the mitzvah of Yediyas Hashem entails two things, entails understanding, there's two things in understanding about the Eibusher. There's understanding the Eibusher as he's seen through creation, which is more or less understanding creation, which is called Maaseh Bereshis. And then there's understanding things that Be'etzim are really higher than understanding, like understanding the Rambam says about Malachim and Neshamas, and the Eibusher, you can't really understand it in what Chassidus calls, the Rambam calls Yediyas Achiv, understanding it in a comprehensive way. We could understand, we could prove that such like a Malach. You don't know what a Malach is, but you could understand the Mitzvah is such an existence of something which is a spiritual entity without a body, even though we can't really comprehend it fully. So these things are called Maaseh Merkava. These things are called the chariot of Hashem, whatever it might be.
What?
The things in the first Uprak, knowing about the Eibusher, knowing about the Malachim and the Neshamas. So the Rambam writes, when he writes about Maaseh Merkava, when he writes about the Eibusher, Malachim, Neshamas, those things, he writes that these things that we learned in these two chapters, they're k'moi tipa min hayam. It's like a drop from the sea, from what needs to be explained in this thing. And he says that the Chachamim said that a person is not allowed to elaborate upon these things. You're only allowed to teach them to one person individually. You can't teach them publicly. Today we teach Kabbalah Chassidus, but as we know that times of the Gemara there's very strong limitations on teaching these types of wisdom. So it says you could only teach it to one person alone. If he's smart and understands things on his own, in other words, he's already thinking, he's already able to figure these things out on his own. So you could tell him a little bit, and he already chapuf on his own the rest. He can't even specify to him everything. And he says these things are very deep, and not everyone is able to really tolerate them, to understand them properly. The end of the 4th chapter, where the Rambam speaks about Maaseh Bereshis, understanding about the heavenly bodies and the earthly elements and things like that, the Rambam says that the things that we learned over here are Kamar Midli. Kamar Midli means like a little water that drips off a bucket. He says that they're deep, but they're not as deep as the previous concepts of Maaseh Merkava, understanding about real spiritual entities, about Eibusher himself. And he says these things, the Chachamim prohibited, you're allowed to teach. The limitations aren't as strong. You're allowed to teach it to an individual person. You can't, you're allowed to explain it to him, but you can't tell it to more than one person. Now, the Rebbe says like this. The Rebbe says, when the Rambam writes that when Moshiach will come, they'll know Dvarim Hastumim, the hidden things. He's referring to Maaseh Bereshis, referring to the lower level of knowledge which he's discussing here, which is about the knowledge of Hashem, which is seeing Hashem through creation. These things are called Dvarim Hastumim because they're hidden, they're deep. To understand how the world runs, as much as science figured things out, there's so much more that even science admits that it doesn't know, doesn't understand. So these things are called Dvarim Hastumim. The Rambam himself writes that they're deep things. Then the Rambam goes further, says, V'yasigu das boiram. They'll understand the knowledge of their Creator. That refers to Maaseh Merkava. That refers to understanding the second element of things which are Maaseh Merkava, things that are higher than physical. It's about malachim, neshamas, the Eibishter himself. That is not stam dvarim astum. It's not stam hidden things. This is das bodim, understanding the knowledge of the Eibishter, understanding about the Eibishter himself. So these are the two things that the Rambam was referring to. So the Rebbe says, the Rebbe gives a very interesting word over here, a very geschmack taich. But that is why the Rambam finishes off, the earth will be filled with knowledge of Hashem as water covers the sea. The Rambam wrote, what's the difference? The way the Rambam describes Ma'aseh Merkava, Ma'aseh Bereishis. Ma'aseh Bereishis, he says, what he explained about the Eibishter and the creation and the physical way of heaven and dust, it's a drop from a bucket. When it comes to Ma'aseh Bereishis, and it comes to saying what he explained about the Malach and the Eibishter, he says, what I explained to you is like a drop from the sea. So there's a very vast difference over here you already see. The drop of a bucket is, okay, a bucket is a very limited amount of water. It's true, it's a drop of a bucket. It's a little water that drips off a bucket, but it's shaloi, but compared to a drop of a sea, it's the ein arech, the gap is much bigger. So the Rebbe said, Ma'aseh Bereishis is deep, understanding the creation is deep. But sof kol sof, it's a limited chachma. It's like what we understand is a drop of a bucket. But it says understanding about the Eibishter, it's impossible. As much as you're going to understand, the Eibishter be'etzim is higher than understanding. So it's like what the Rambam writes, and Moed Nevuchim Chassidus says a lot of times, there's a difference between idiyas achiv and idiyas hashlila. There's a difference between knowing something. For example, we say someone is smart. What does it mean when we say someone is smart? It's a I don't know what the right word to say in English, but you're actually describing what he is. He's someone that's smart. You're describing the reality of something. When you say the Eibishter is smart, the Rambam explains, you can't say the Eibishter is smart because the Eibishter is higher than wisdom. When you say the Eibishter is smart, you're just trying to say it's yediyas hashlil. It's a negative thing that you can't say that he doesn't have wisdom. But to say that we understand what it means, the Eibishter himself is higher than wisdom. You can't define, when you say the Eibishter is smart, you're giving the Eibishter a definition of wisdom. We don't understand what that definition of wisdom is. The only thing we know, there's something there which, in other words, we know that it can't be that it's not there. It's like you say the Eibishter is kind. The human being, we understand what kindness is. Is that the kindness we understand of a human being is the kindness of the Eibishter? No, the Eibishter's kindness is higher than our understanding. But we know that there's something. You can't say the Eibishter is not kind, right? So it's whatever we understand. It's more that we have to say that it exists. What it is, l'mayla, what it is by the Eibishter, we don't know what it is. That's what Chassidus calls yediyas hashlila. So this is already something which the Rambam writes is a drop from a sea. Why? Because in the Gemara it's explained that a sea is called mayim she'ein lahem sof. Halachically, it's considered like water which has no end. That it's even though physically it has a limit, but either potentially it has no limit or poel mamish, whatever the beer that Rabbi gives over there, is considered for halachic purposes as water that has no limit. So the understanding of the Eibishter himself, Ma'aseh Merkava is Ein Sof, is unlimited. So that's why the Rambam finishes off, Kamayim Layam Mechasim. Since the Rambam is speaking at the end of Hilchos Malach, not only will understand the Varim Astum, the hidden things, which is the Eibishter, which is the wisdom of creation. He'll understand the wisdom of godliness, the understanding of the spiritual worlds, about how much a person is able to understand about the Eibishter himself. So the Rambam finishes off, the knowledge of Hashem will fill the world like water covers the sea. It means that it's Ein Sof, it's unlimited. The water covers the sea, it's unlimited amount. As much as you have, it's just a drop from the sea. It's the Rambam trying to bring out the idea that even the understanding that you have about these things, you don't really understand. It's like yediyas hashlila. You know that this, you can't say it's not there. You know that it has to be there from a negative, not from a positive. So that's why the Rebbe says in Hilchos Tshuva, when the Rambam speaks about the knowledge of Hashem, he doesn't put in the second half of the pasuk, Kamayim L'Yam B'Chasim, like water covers the sea. Because in Hilchos Tshuva is not focusing on knowing Ma'aseh Merkava, knowing the deepest secrets of godliness. As in Hilchos Malach, when the Rambam says that they'll know the Eibishter, Kvayach about the Eibishter himself, so he writes, Kamayim L'Yam B'Chasim, it's like water covers the sea. It's because it's a knowledge which is unlimited, and as much as you understand, you're never really understanding it fully. That's one beer of the Rebbe explains in a few places. So based on that beer, Pasha comes out that there's a strong correlation between the beginning of the Rambam and the end of the Rambam. The Rambam, at the end of the Sefer, is talking about the mitzvah of Yediyas Hashem, the way it's here now. There's another place. There's another beat of the Rebbe also saying there's another place the Rebbe says that really that what the Rambam is talking about at the end of the Sefer is even deeper than what the Rambam is talking about at the beginning of the Sefer. Because in the beginning of the Sefer he's talking about understanding what the Rambam calls it Ma'aseh Merkava, understanding the chariot, right? I'm sure the term, I'm sure you've heard, comes because a reference to the chariot that Yechezkel saw. In the beginning of Yechezkel, he saw that there's a whole vision, that the secrets of Seder Shtaus are hidden in that prophecy. So the Gemara calls it Ma'aseh Merkava. Ma'aseh Merkava, as the Rebbe makes a diak somewhere, it's the chariot of Hashem. But in the Merkava of Hashem, the Hashem's chariot is the chariot, and there's Kvayochel, there's the Eibush that's riding on the chariot. So he says the knowledge of Ma'aseh Merkava that Rambam was talking about in the beginning of the Sefer is referring to more understanding Hishtalshelus, understanding the spiritual world. It's not so much about the Eibishter himself, Kvayochel, understanding that is so. Now the Rebbe is like this. The Rebbe, so when the Rambam writes at the end of the Sefer, they'll know the hidden things. The first beer that I told you is that the hidden things goes on Ma'aseh Bereishis, the wisdom of creation. When it says Yasigo Das Berim, they'll understand the knowledge of Hashem. It goes on Ma'aseh Merkava, and the spiritual aspects which the Rambam speaks in the first two chapters of the Sefer. The Rebbe says deeper that you could say V'yoden Dvarim Asum, the know the hidden things goes on both. Saya on the wisdom of creation and on the Ma'aseh Merkava. When Moshiach will come, we'll have Yasigo Das Boiram. We'll be able to Kvayochel to understand something about the Eibishter himself, which until then, in other words, Ma'aseh Merkava is more whatever you could sort of say the chitzonius of Elokus, and not so much understanding about the Eibishter himself, so to say, directly. So when Moshiach will come, there'll be a higher knowledge, which is even higher than Ma'aseh Merkava, which is Das Boiram, understanding the Eibishter's knowledge himself. Now, this is all. It's a nice beer of the Rebbe. There's another beer of the Rebbe. This beer ties in very well. The second beer ties in very well with Chassidus also. It's a very deep word though. This is the Hadron of the Rebbe in Tav Shalamed Hey. I don't know if anyone learned it, but I'm sure people learned the Hadron. It's one of the deepest sichos of the...
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's one of the deepest sichos of the Rebbe. Not just deep, but it's fundamental of Pashat explaining Eibishter and Val. Well, anyway, to make things simple and to use the terms of Chassidus, which make things more simple, the Rebbe explains, at the beginning of the Rambam, that Sikha, the Rebbe reverses the meaning of the Yedin Dvarim Asum as Usumsi. What the Rebbe explains, at the beginning of the Rambam says like this. The Rambam discusses the mitzvahs to know about the Eibishter. The Eibishter creates everything. He's a Motzi Rishon. He's the first entity, first thing that exists, and he brings into existence everything that we find that's there. And everything that's in the heaven and earth and was between them was only created from the truth of his existence. He says, and if someone will go up in a person's mind that he doesn't exist, nothing else is able to exist. I don't want to go into the whole pulpul of it. The Rebbe says a very, very deep thing. The Rebbe says that in the midst of knowing of Hashem, there's two things. The Eibishter himself is totally higher than creation. He's totally higher than even being referred to as a creator, so to say. In other words, what we call the Eibishter as a Motzi Rishon, the first entity, the first thing that exists, that came before everything else, that is already a level of godliness where the Eibishter, so to say, was mitzamtzum himself, he lowered himself to be able to be called a Motzi Rishon. And if you use the terms of Chassidus, it's like Mamalik Kalam and Sevav Kalam, this level of godliness that transcends the world, it's higher than the world. Then there's the way the Eibishter, so to say, he created as a spheres, he created a system through which the Eibishter is called a Motzi Rishon, a creator that exists, which we're able to somewhat, even in a way, whatever, some way understand, and that's called Motzi Rishon. So the Rebbe basically explains that in the mitzvah of Yedias Hashem, there's a mitzvah of knowing and understanding two things. The mitzvah of understanding, from one hand, is a positive, is understanding how, since we see everything exists, so there must be a primordial existence that brings everything into existence. In other words, it's understanding that there is an existence of the Eibishter which is totally complete and the most shleimustic existence that could be that brings everything into existence. But then there's another aspect. There's understanding that really the level that we call of the Eibusher that exists is really, there's a level where, so to say, the Eibusher is Einay Motzei. It's a very deep part of the Rebbe Pasha. It's not a personal thing. The Eibusher doesn't exist. Nothing else is able to exist. So the Rebbe says it's not, I mean, okay, I can move on, that's simple pshat, but the Rebbe says, what does it mean? Shehu Einay Motzei, that he doesn't exist. It's a very deep thing, that not pshat that Chashon the Eibusher doesn't exist. The Eibusher doesn't exist as an existence that we're able to relate to. The Eibusher is, in other words, when we speak about the Eibusher in a way of understanding him, that is an existence that we're relating to as an existence. So if a person, the Rebbe says, is a higher way of understanding about the Eibusher, Shehu Einay Motzei, that he doesn't exist. What does it mean doesn't exist? I'm not talking about Chas v'Shalom, someone that says the Eibusher doesn't exist. I mean, someone that comes to realization, he says that this, all that I understand about the Eibusher, this is not, the Eibusher himself, it's total, he's Einay Motzei, he's not Motzei, he's not part of this existence that I'm talking about.
Remember the Rebbe said, that's the pshat in Yal.
Yeah, so it's Aliyah and Das.
Aliyah Das, and it's masik that there is no other mitzvah.
Right. So the Rebbe says it's very deep hadron how it affects Torah mitzvahs in the world. That really in creation there's two things. From one hand, creation is a reality. But since the Eibusher is real and he creates the world is real. On the other hand, the reality of the world is not really real. Why? Because mitzad the level of the Eibusher is Einay Motzei, where he's higher than existence, so to say. So the world taka doesn't exist, and that the Rebbe explains. That's why. That's the idea. From one only do a mitzvah, you're creating when the Torah mitzvah is two things. You're breaking the mitzvahs of the world and you're changing it for the good. Breaking the mitzvahs of the world comes from a level of godliness where the world doesn't exist, and making a positive change comes from the level where godliness does exist, and through that he's able to make a change in creation. It's a very, very deep pattern. I don't want to get into it right now. Not that I feel entitled to explain it either. But the Rebbe says at the end of the Rebbe, but it comes down to the Sikh. The Rebbe is a very beautiful thing. When Moshiach will come, we'll have the understanding of both things together. From one hand, we'll understand the level of Yodim Dvarim Astumim, the deepest things. Here the Rebbe learns deepest things going on the highest levels. The deepest things means the level where the Eibusher is Einay Motzei, the level of comprehending the Eibusher on a level where Kvayochel is higher than the existence of Eibusher. Kvayochel, the way the Eibusher, higher than the way the Eibusher limited himself to be able to be related to as an Eibusher. And then via Sigul Das Boydam, they'll understand the knowledge of their creators refers to the lower level. The Eibusher already limited himself to be called the creator. So in other words, the Rebbe says when Mashiach will come, there will be a fusion of two things. On one hand, there will be the understanding, which means we'll become one with the level of godliness which is totally higher than the world, which means at that level the world taka doesn't exist. But it won't destroy the world because it will be fused with understanding the level of the Eibusher, where the Eibusher, so to say, was mitzamsum himself that he should be called a Boirei. So Mamela, from one hand, we'll be able to comprehend the level of the Eibusher, where inside the level, there's no Welt. If so, why wouldn't the world stop to exist? So the Rebbe discussed, because together with that will be via Sigul Das Boirei. We'll come together with the understanding of the Eibusher, the way the Eibusher Vayochel is mitzamsum himself to be Boirei. There'll be the unification of both. That's what Yitaka will happen when Mashiach will come. The world will be a world, but the world, from one hand, Kamayim L'Yom V'Chatzim, also really is two opposite things. Is that the whole world, so to say, loses its existence, just nullified to the Eibusher, but this itself becomes the existence of the world. The world itself, not that the world stops existing, but the world, as it's a world, becomes totally absorbed in godliness. So the Rebbe is explaining, anyway, what I wanted to, it's getting later. I just wanted to say, B'Kitzur, this is not the Rebbe's word, but it's interesting, there's a sefer, there's a person, Alter Hilovitz, he wrote a sefer, Chikrei Zmanim. The Rebbe, he was a brother of Shilom Kuratin. Remember when the Mashpil Lubavitch Shilom, he was his brother-in-law. The Rebbe gave him the shus to Prince Sichas. But he says his own says that interesting thing. He says he wants to say the same thing. Hilchas Shuva. The Rambam writes, "Mashiach will say be a Chacham Gadol, and say he'll be a Navi, like almost like Moshe Rabbeinu." It says Chacham Gadol that will be very smart. He'll be able to teach us the secrets of Ma'aseh Breish, the secrets of creation, the godliness that we see in creation, and he'll be a great prophet to be able to teach us Ma'aseh Merkava, the secrets of the Eibusher that's higher, that they say the deeper in Yonam of all the Kos and Hashem and things like that. Cholif in
Ich lasse schon
hier
viel
das
anders.
einmal Quellmanisch, ja.